Well, happy Lent, everybody. You know, our common Catholic tradition during Lent is to give something up. When I was a young teenager, I had a paper route with my friend Pat O'Connor. And we'd get paid twice a month. And right after we got paid, we'd go to the bank, cash a check, and go to this convenience store and buy Snickers bars. I think we bought up like a box of ding-dongs and all kinds of other really healthy food that our parents regularly provided for us. And then we'd go to Grover Cleveland Park in the neighborhood and stuff our faces. So that when Lent would come around, I would fast from candy and go for the entire Lenten period without spending my paper route money on that kind of stuff. You know, and looking back, it really didn't have anything to do with growing as a disciple of Jesus. I guess it produced some self-discipline. But I've been thinking as we enter into this Lent, you know, we have been subject to COVID for almost a year now, and therefore been on a kind of forced Lenten practice of giving up so many things. So I've been thinking, maybe this year we need a new approach to Lent. Maybe instead of giving something up, we should instead try and focus on how Jesus wants us to grow as his disciples. Rather than thinking of giving up candy or whatever, let's instead discover what the Lord wants to do for us this Lent. Let's be open to him and to how he wants to form and mold us this Lent. Jeremiah the prophet tells us that God is the potter and we are the clay, and God is trying to form us into Jesus' disciple and friend and co-worker. Maybe this Lent we can be open to how he wants to form us during this season. You see, this approach shifts the focus from what I'm doing to an openness to what perhaps the Lord wants to do. It changes the focus so that I'm not the project manager this Lent. The Lord is now the project manager, and our task is to cooperate with him. Now, of course, the question is, what does he want to do with us and for us this Lent? How does he want to form you? And you know, the good news is neuroscientists tell us that our brains are plastic, that no matter how old you are, you can change and grow. So don't tell me I'm too old to change. The Lord can change if we're open. So what do you think he may want to do with us this year? Well, I think we can get a clue in today's gospel. It's so brief. It's such a short gospel. You may close your eyes and open them, and all of a sudden it was over. It starts with the Spirit driving Jesus into the desert to confront Satan who wants to tempt him. And then afterwards, immediately afterwards, he goes back up to Galilee and is convinced that the power and kingdom of God is arriving, spreading everywhere, wherever he goes. Now, to understand this passage, and perhaps how the Lord wants to form you this Lent, we have to step back for a minute and recall the scenes from Jesus' early ministry that we've been reading about in Mark right before the Lenten season. Let's see if you can remember these. The first one is Jesus coming out of the Jordan after John baptizes him. The heavens are torn open and the power of heaven pours down upon him. The second scene is Jesus in Capernaum preaching with power and exorcising the demon out of that man with power. And then he goes and heals Peter's mother-in-law of a fever, touches her hand and frees her from it. And then he heals the leper. Now those 4 scenes tell us something about what happened to Jesus in the desert and what he wants to do with us this Lent. And here's my suggestion. And I've been obsessed with these 4 scenes for a couple of weeks. These scenes tell us that God is sending a new kind of power into our world through Jesus. This is not the world's power. That power only cares about the wealthy and the powerful. That power is blind to the needy. It's cold and indifferent. It always craves more power. The world's power often wants to dominate and manipulate, dehumanize and destroy. No, the power that Jesus is filled with and flows out of him is a new kind of power. It's divine. It's holy. It's beautiful. And unlike the ancient gods, watch, because Jesus shares his power. No Greek god would ever share his power with mere mortals, but Jesus shares his power. And the weird thing is, when he shares it, he doesn't lose it. He actually has more of it. It's inexhaustible. It's infinite. And when he shares it with the poor and the vulnerable, the weak and the outcast. He seems to be directed by this power to attend to them, to notice them, and to welcome them. And did you notice how personal his power is? He touches the hand of Peter's mother-in-law. He dares to touch the leper. Instead of leprosy coming out of the leper, power goes out of Jesus. And it makes people whole. It renews and restores and heals. So this takes us to us and to what Jesus wants to do for us this Lent. When he was driven by the Spirit of God into the desert, he discovered that he was filled with the power that allowed him to handle the temptations of the devil. Unlike Adam and Eve, unlike Israel in the desert, he was faithful to God in the face of temptation. For the first time, one human being was faithful to God. He discovered that the power to defeat the enemy was in him. And that's why he returns to Galilee, full of confidence that God's power and God's rule and God's reign had arrived. That's why he knew that the reign of the enemy was over. So what was he doing when he went to Galilee and healed and taught and exorcised demons? He was freeing people. He was freeing them from what had hurt them, from what tied them down, from what prevented them from living fully human lives. So what does Jesus want to do for us this Lent? My guess is he wants to free us. He wants to free you. He wants to free you from wounds that you received so long ago you may have forgotten, but they still affect you. He wants to free you from your cynicism, from your resentment, your bitterness. He wants to free you from your fear, your anger, whatever it is that prevents us from living full lives as his disciples. But you know the real reason he wants to do this for us this Lent? It's love. It's his love for you. But it's also because he knows if you say yes to his freedom, you will be able to love like him. Boy, wouldn't